I think we've got a tough year ahead for labour relations. Ordinary people, ordinary workers are being hit very hard in the pocket as a result of these recent developments. And I think we're going to be facing into a pretty severe winter of discontent in the coming collective bargaining round. 21 years ago, when a group of experts were putting their heads together to draft this new progressive framework for our labour relations system in South Africa, we did dream. And we dreamed of a labour law and a labour relations dispensation that would create stability in our labour market, that would lay a platform for growth and prosperity, and infuse a real sense of fairness and justice into our labour relations system. So what the LRA did was to regulate, but it didn't seek to change the fundamental tenets of our traditional Anglo-Saxon culture of labour relations. Our system endorsed the notion of two competing adversaries, capital and labour, them and us, contesting for power and for influence. This, by the way, suited the ideological prescripts of both employers and labour, the former fiercely protective of its rights-based prerogatives and hegemony in the workplace, and the latter viewing the dismantling of the capitalist system as the key to economic emancipation. I'm not suggesting that we tamper with the tools to exercise pressure, the right to strike and the recourse to lockout. These are constitutionally protected rights that occupy an important place in our labour law. What I am suggesting is that the architects of the LRA always viewed these rights as weapons of last resort, to be used sparingly and only after bona fide negotiations and conciliation had failed to produce an agreed outcome. And as our labour relations systems matured, these architects envisaged a progressive decline in industrial action. The reality is that the incidence of strikes has increased dramatically. We have lost a respect for rules and procedure, and as a consequence, strike violence is increasingly prevalent. Our collective bargaining represents and resembles a kind of trench warfare where parties dig trenches and fire salvos across each other's bows and expect these tactics to deliver consensus-based outcomes. Inevitably, we are confronted by a plethora of disputes. But the source of the problem lies also in the fact that our workplaces are by and large dispute-ridden and dispute-driven. Our managers and union officials have in large measure, I suggest, abrogated their responsibility to preempt and to problem-solve differences at source in the workplace. The reality is that our labour relations system emerged from a period of struggle where parties were adversaries and at arm's length. We were not prescient enough at the time to recognise that relationships and the quality of engagement in the workplace would be absolutely critical to determining the level of stability in our labour market and to create the kind of understandings and level of cooperation that would enhance our capability of competing effectively in a globalizing economy. The reality is that the fight, if we are to survive and grow and prosper, can no longer be inside our enterprises. If there is to be a fight, it has to be a fight about securing a competitive edge over others in domestic and global markets. Our old-style industrial relations are increasingly out of place in the modernizing world of work, which is increasingly knowledge and IT-driven, and which is populated by better educated people who want their voices heard and their worth recognized.
There is one area that we need to address in whatever form, because if you look at the one area that you have mentioned, Charles, in Medupi, during the time of Minister Kigaba, workers go out on strike, unlawful strike, then later they are paid. You give them a bonus. And I'm saying we compensate wrong behavior. Every year, you have a violent strike, you dismiss people. Before you conclude that collective agreement, one of the new demands is the reinstatement of the people that have been dismissed. Then it becomes part of the settlement agreement. And it requires decisive leadership to basically draw a line in the sand to say, I'm not going to continue with that particular behavior and attitude.
You're essentially saying we need a space to fundamentally relook what we did in the 90s and where it got us, and whether we need to pull it apart and form a new compact, if you will.
I think it lies in the organisation itself. There are organisations in this room that have had 2 days unprotected industrial action in 22 years. There's a specific employer in this room that's had that. But they work like hell on their relationships, not only with their shop stewards, but with their employees. They have initiatives after initiatives after initiatives at a plant level in respect of running that relationship. Actually, I always say in that factory that produces world-class product day in and day out, management knows what's going on because management's connected to the workforce. And yes, there are times, ebbs and flows, where it's better than not, but a lot of that management comes from the shop floor. So I think, like employment equity, we're always looking for someone else to do it for us. We need to take it and do it ourselves. So I think the problem lies in respect of we not taking the initiative. So in most relationships, when last you train your shop stewards? When last you train your managers? When last you train your shop stewards and your managers together? Regardless of what relationship you have, I keep on saying to employers, you have the funding, the ability, and the power to change that relationship. I go to a distribution center the other day. They've got a communication strategy that's unbelievable. They communicate daily, 3 times a day with a simple message. They communicate weekly, monthly, and every month they have a team building exercise where management, who's generally too lazy to participate in these things, actually participate. They don't have any trade union. They don't have any issues. But they just simply put in a simple communication strategy.
We have to move from an adversarial, dispute-driven environment into an environment which is relationship-driven. So we've got to focus on building the skills and competencies to engage more effectively. We've got to be able to build the skills to own problems and to problem solve, instead of seeing a solution through the fight. And if we can begin to do that, I think it'll be remarkable at the progress that we can make within our workplaces. We're finding in the South African firmament that multi-term agreements, 2- and 3-year agreements, are becoming more the order of the day in collective bargaining. Now, I would think most employers would regard the space between one negotiation and the next as a collective bargaining holiday, quite frankly. They are so exercised and stressed by the engagement and the encounter that the longer you can put it off, the better it is. We can get down to the business of running a business and making money. I'm arguing that one should be using that space for a strategic engagement, which has got nothing to do with distribution. It's got to do, how do we build this company? How do we protect our employees? How do we arrest the decline in employment and look to mechanisms to grow employment? Those are the kind of conversations that I think we ought to be seizing the moment to begin undertaking.
Managers don't want to touch these issues. So my concluding point is, you can't do any of this in an undisciplined environment. Managers are in control of discipline, and every single day they're trying to run away from the basic disciplines. They don't want to do the discipline stuff. And again, discipline goes upwards as well. If one of your managers does it, they should be disciplined the same. And we are inconsistent. If we look at the CCMA cases and the bargaining cases, most of the cases are lost and won on inconsistency because companies are applying the rules and regulations differently. There's one client in this room that I can tell you that if someone came late for work today, something would have happened. For the rest of you, I'm not sure. So if you can't even get late coming right at a management level, don't even talk to me about performance management in 360 degrees. And if you can't get late coming right, you can't get quality and those kind of things right either. And you also can't get safety. Because we've seen in a lot of firms that because we're so slack on discipline, because we want to be popular with everyone, that our safety and those health procedures also slip at the same time. So we've got to regain that ground.